IVM.
So it's been a great week on IVM, and I hope that you're listening to as many shows as you can. If you're not following us on social media, we're on IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. First, I'm going to tell you about a few new shows that we launched. Last week, we launched a show called Marbles Lost and Found with Zen and Avanti. It's a show about mental health, which I think is a fairly interesting conversation to have, and you should enjoy it. We also have a new fictional fun storytelling show for all of our listeners. Croc Tales by Anand Sivakumaran is a bi-weekly show where Anand spins a story from a prompt that could be a word or phrase coming from you. Catch these episodes every Monday and Thursday. On Simplified this week, the trio dig further into the Football World Cup history with some trivia and silly jokes on a longer episode. On The Scene of the Unseen, Amit Verma is joined by stand-up comedians Aditi Mittal and Abbas Momin to talk about the pros and the cons of the Indian comedy scene. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus does an exit interview with his producer Naveen Narona. Naveen's going to be terribly missed around here. If you're not following him, please follow him on Twitter and Instagram. He's at House of Narona. Try and listen to as many of these shows as you can. And now, on to your show.
Hey, welcome to Shunya One, episode 60. Here we are, me and Amit doing this as we go along.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
It has.
Just like yesterday, it was episode 50, and now...
Today it's 60, tomorrow it's 70.
Yes.
We're doing 10 episodes every day.
We're inching up to the 100 number where we have promised a much bigger live event.
Yes, we will.
With more drinks.
That's a good idea.
I'm just putting it out there so more people listen.
Yes, more drinks are a good thing.
All right.
Yes.
We have a very interesting guest today, Sachin Uppal, who's going to talk about a lot of interesting things in the domain of marketing and analytics, something I'm fairly familiar with now.
I'm going to take your word for it. That is very interesting. Well, unfortunately, I was not there at the episode's recording, but I will listen to it as soon as it's out.
Yes.
Just like everybody else.
And we also had some interesting stuff on the Slack channel. It's great to see people joining in on the conversation, giving feedback a lot more. And of course, our new polls are really doing well. We have some results.
Yes, we do. Based on the conversation with Kulin, we asked a question about insurance. Are you willing to give insurance companies information about your whereabouts? The first answer was yes, sure. The second answer was selective information is fine. And the third answer was not at all, no personal info. And the number one answer over there is that selective information is fine. People don't mind giving up a certain amount of stuff, but they don't want to give up everything. I think that makes sense to me. I think that, depending on what is needed, you give up some stuff, but you don't give up everything.
Yeah, but it's also an interesting time when you always second guess how much is needed, right?
Because it is, yes, we are in an age of data leakage.
Exactly.
So you don't want to give up more than you have to, but it's insurance. You need to give up something.
I think we'll get to see how ACO does some interesting, cool things there.
Yeah,
of course, we'll talk to more and more such interesting people on this show. So onwards with today's episode.
Yes.
All right, welcome to Shunya One. We have with me today Sachin Uppal, the Chief Marketing Officer at Play Games 24/7. Welcome to the show, Sachin.
Hey, hi. Thanks, Shiladitya, for calling me.
Yes, I'm so glad we made it. I know we've been coordinating for a while to sort of figure this out, and I think it's your first podcast.
Yes, this is my first podcast. I've been hearing podcasts, maybe sometime back, AIB podcasts, but
right?
That's about it. That's my experience with podcasts.
Yeah, but now I think with Shunya One, what we're trying to do is, of course, open the tech world and otherwise startup world.
Am I going to be as popular as AIB?
Yes, we hope so. We hope
right.
so. It all depends on how much juicy entertainment you give us today.
In the nerd community, I don't mind the popularity. So
yes,
that's fine.
Exactly. But just to sort of introduce yourself to the audience, if you could give us, what your story has been so far.
Sure. I started working somewhere in 2003, 2004. I pursued my engineering in instrumentation and control, which in simple words means measurement and control.
Yes.
So I had some seeds of, measuring things right during my education. And very quickly I realized that, I like technology, but I don't like coding. Okay.
Okay.
So I started as a software engineer with Wipro Technologies. I was there for a couple of years. I was doing kernel level coding, actually at the microprocessor level. And I kind of realized that I like, consumer behavior more than the electrical behavior. And so I kind of wanted to move into marketing, and I didn't have a background in marketing from the perspective of having pursued
an MBA,
and so on and so forth. And the funny thing about Indian education system and even in the corporate is that unless you have the right kind of degrees and so on and so forth, you do not get the right kind of opportunity. And luckily for me, I interviewed with a company called National Instruments. It was a US-based company. It was a startup in India at the time when I went there, and I got a job in marketing. They asked me, "Can you do this?" I said, "Sure." And I said, "Okay, let's start." And that was my, entry into marketing. I had no clue about marketing, but my mentor over there, she had studied and in US, and she had pursued several campaigns in US and so on and so forth. So her mentorship led me to learn a lot in marketing. So I was with National Instruments for like a couple of years, and I did around I would say around 120 events in 1.5 years, which was practically 3 events every week.
And this is on the road,
These were across India, like from north to south to east to west. Mm-hmm. So I was a 3-member team, including myself, doing 3 events every week across the country.
Wow!
So I used to work for 17-18 hours every day, including Saturdays and Sundays.
Events is serious stuff.
Yes.
It's literally, of course, so many people do it, event management. But I thought, I remember in my engineering days, I do remember using it. I remember using VI as a tool.
Virtual instrumentation.
Correct.
Right.
I thought they were a software company.
Yes. So, NI is a software plus hardware company.
Right.
And the thing is that, the concept was very different. People had been using hardware instruments and, kind of making people understand that you can do all the work that you were doing with hardware using a software. Mm-hmm. It was quite a challenge. It was quite visionary also. But then it was quite a challenge to explain that to people. And the kind of people that we were dealing with were scientists and engineers all across the country, right? So we had to do a lot of roadshows. We had to do a lot of workshops, in the campuses, outside the campuses, seminars, webinars, and so many things. And this I'm talking about 2005, I guess. And that's where I started learning about digital marketing. How do you run digital campaigns? How do you run offline campaigns in terms of events and so on and so forth? And how do you connect the things, right? And one of the key things that I learned during that time was that unless you're able to measure the performance of whatever you're doing, whether it is a seminar or a workshop or a online webinar or whatever that you're doing, if you're not able to measure the performance,
there's no point.
It's not helpful, right? And so applying, the basic principles of measurement, you can then control those things, right? And that's where I kind of gotten super excited and interested in this domain. And then I moved into a company called Nasiba. This was like a Monaco-based company, and they had another office in Dubai. So I basically set up the marketing department for them in Bangalore. And, so that is the place where I learned a lot about email marketing. Now, this I'm again talking about several years back, right? And email marketing had existed for a very long time by then. So I kind of picked up a lot of things that people have already, done and, kept reading and kept experimenting, kept trying things out. And that kind of, again, helped me a lot in understanding consumers. So I was dealing with, CXO level audiences. I really mean CEOs across the world. And, I experimented a lot with languages, subject lines, so on and so forth. And that was quite helpful, right?
Email marketing became a whole science in itself.
Absolutely. Right. It is, right? And once you start connecting email marketing with web analytics, you start seeing the journeys.
Right.
You start seeing like, what happens when someone does X, right? And then once they land on the landing page, what happens then? How much time they are spending over there? Like what CTRs or what bounce rates are, and so many other things, right? Like, so that grounding in analytics or early measurement, right, kind of kept helping me. So one fine day, I got a call from one of the founders of Games 247, and this was the time when they had just started. We were still building the website, no customers, no revenue. And, I had worked in large companies, and, I didn't want to be a small, thing in a big story.
Yeah,
so
startups were not
and
cool back then.
This is, I'm talking about 2007, 2008, where India, didn't have a startup story. Like, people really looked down upon you if you were working in a startup. Someone would not, it'll be hard to find a girlfriend. And
as if it wasn't a problem already for Indians.
Yeah, and your parents would kind of think that you didn't find a job, or this is something that you're doing because you're not sure what you're doing, and so on and so forth. So I think I picked up this opportunity was quite fascinating for me. It was a completely new industry. Gaming as an industry at that point of time didn't largely exist, and we saw some initial data where we saw that the internet penetration in the country was picking up. The growth path of internet penetration was very similar to China at that point of time, in the early stages when the internet grew in China and in US. So we picked up that trajectory, and we said, all right, that makes sense. Let's start. Let's build a plan around what games that we can offer, and how we can go about it. And funny thing, we picked up a couple of games. One was Rummy, other was chess. And very few people know that we launched chess in the online domain, and we failed, and we had to shut down the entire chess game.
Oh.
And this was largely because people started using bots on their computers to play chess. So they would, in parallel, whatever the bot was telling them, they would make those moves.
Yeah, because it's easy to calculate.
It's because chess is 100% skill based game, right? So and if there is a machine that can calculate better than you, then you can just win. And so anyhow, so we had to stop that. But then we kind of figured out that Rummy is something which is very popular in several parts of the country. People have grown up playing Rummy. Like, my parents used to play Rummy when they were young. I used to play with my friends and family when I was young. There was no money involved in it, but it was just good fun, and everybody used to like playing it because there was, there is some thinking involved, there is some strategy involved, which is something which is exciting for people, kids or even adults when they're growing up, right? So that was interesting for us, and that's where I started. Once the first month when we started our marketing campaign, I think I had some $50,000 to spend, and I was like, okay, let's try to reach out to people who are already doing this, who are already playing Rummy online, or they're playing other games online. Let's talk to them and see if they would be interested in playing something of this sort online. And that story worked out pretty well. And since then, we've been growing 100% year on year.
Wow.
And
and that's from 2008 onwards.
Yes.
That Rummy Circle's been active, and you guys were, I think, the first of many such games, which of course came later.
Yes. So, like I said, that gaming space was practically very, very small at the time when we entered, and especially skill gaming and real money skill gaming as a category didn't exist.
Exactly,
so we kind of started the category in the country, where we launched Rummy Circle, and it kind of became we'd not anticipated that it would become this big.
Right.
What we did early on, right, was that there was this social networking platform called Orkut.
Yes.
And it was
Wow.
super popular at that time, right? Like super popular. And so, I created a small group in Orkut, and, all our players who were already playing, I asked them to join the same group, and then we started getting some more people joining those groups. And what I personally used to do was I used to go and, have like one-on-one real conversations with people that, did you like this? Did you like that? There is this event happening. There is that happening. This tournament happening, so on and so forth. And I used to capture a lot of feedback from all the comments that people used to post over there. And that helped a lot, right? Like that definitely helps you, gives you input into your product. Plus, right from the start, right, one thing that we consistently have focused and built that as a culture in the company is looking at data. So now you have on one side, consumer feedback with very specific comments. On the other side, you have, data telling you that do this or do that. It kind of helped us a lot in the early stages to kind of mold and, structure the features and so on and so forth. And we started getting feedback about a certain kind of game format of Rummy, and that led to we actually, doing some further research and building that product. And that game format grew our revenues like several folds, right?
Wow.
Like, so these are some very, very early days. You'll be surprised. One interesting thing that we did was, and this is very, very early on, I'm talking about 2009. We used to have like a friend referral kind of a system where you can go and enter like 5 email IDs manually.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was like, this is really bad experience. Like, who's going to manually enter 5 email IDs, right?
Yeah.
And those were the early days when, Gmail was picking up, Facebook was picking up, and, I kind of brought that insight and kind of revamped our friend referral system, where we started importing like email IDs and sending out automated communication to them, which was personalized. And like we saw a jump of 400% in paid conversions.
Wow. What does that mean?
So a free conversion means that someone just joins and plays for free, right? Which is the bulk of our, bulk of our players. But then there are a small fraction of people who would actually make a deposit also, and they would want to play for real money, right?
Yeah.
And in those player base, we saw like a 400% jump because people started importing their friend list and they started sending out invites on our behalf, essentially. So they became our brand ambassadors. Now, this is 2009, right? Like, this just sounds very
Commonplace.
basic, commonplace today, right? Like, but at that point of time, doing this just completely changed the trajectory of our business, right? And that kind of so I calculated something called as a virality factor, and I built like a fairly complicated model around it. And the moment I implemented this feature, all my calculations went for a toss, and my virality factor went through the roof, right? The good thing is that a virality factor is kind of a reaffirmation of the quality of your product. Like if people are willing to refer their friends and bring them on board, and those people are willing to pay and use your product, it's basically telling you that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. And at one point of time, the Orkut community shut down because Orkut shut down. Then we moved to Facebook, and we started having these conversations on Facebook, and the virality factor kept increasing, and even till today, right? Like almost, I would say, like 25% of our business comes through friend referrals.
Wow.
It's just that if you're building an awesome product, if you are constantly innovating and putting in efforts on your product, looking at various points of data, it just shows up in your virality factor. So I would say that if your virality factor is not strong, it's a very strong indication that there are challenges with your product. People are facing, challenges in several parts of the journey.
Yeah, and I think what you said, right, back then, this was early days of, the digital marketing landscape itself. And like no one spoke of UX and all of these other buzzwords you have today. Virality factor, or I think NPS or Net Promoter Scores are again very MBA speak. Frankly, I also don't understand it today that well. But understanding what guides or motivates your user base to grow and do things and promote your product is, after all, building a great product and a great experience.
Yeah, and being a gaming company and a gaming mindset, right? What I did was that with the friend referral system, I gamified that. And this I'm again talking about like several years back.
Correct.
Today there are hundreds of companies doing the same thing, right? So I basically made a game out of friend referrals, right? Like the moment you will import your friend list, I'll show you that, if you send an invite, so let's say you had 100 friends. So I would show you that, 100 into 1,000 rupees per friend. So you're going to make 100,000 if you send an invite to everyone.
Wow.
With every single uncheck that you will do, right? Like the money keeps going down. So it kind of...
It's demotivating.
It's kind of like, it's kind of telling you that, okay, I should send out an invite to many of my friends. And even after all this, right, the interesting thing is that, people still understand the concept of spam, right? Like, no, because these are,
personal
like,
reference.
yeah, I mean, if I'm sending invites to my friends, I don't want to send it out to everyone, right? So I would select like maybe like 10 or 20 of my contacts and send it out to them. But if this system didn't exist, I would send it out to one person.
Right.
In our previous system, right? So as compared to that, sending it out to 10 to 15% is like increasing your virality, right? Like someone becoming your brand ambassador and so on and so forth. Another thing, that people ask me on a regular basis is that why is that your game has become so successful, or why is that your marketing is in such way the way it is. And I think it kind of comes down to the point that how do you think about marketing, right? And how do you measure things, and how important, how much craziness can you bring to measurement, right? So because of my grounding in measurement based marketing or data driven marketing, like it's called today, I always used to wonder that where is this organic traffic coming from? So on every website, whatever product that you're running, right, app or web, you would see that there'll be some percentage of your overall traffic which is organic, which is not Google search organic, but it is just pure someone directly hitting your website, right? And it's confusing, like
like someone just thought of you.
Yeah, like that doesn't make sense, right? Like someone just one fine day wakes up and says, okay, let me go to some random website called Rummy Circle. No, why? That doesn't make any sense. So right from very early on, right, I wanted to answer this question. I wanted to find out that where is this story happening. And then I read this statement by Peter Drucker that half my marketing spend is wasted. And I don't know which half. and you know what? Like, I was like, I'm going to find that other half. I'm going to answer that. Like, I'm going to, figure this out. And we just, on an ongoing basis, right, like as a culture in the company, right, made sure that we are measuring everything, right? Like, and unless it is part of your culture, you will miss out on several areas where you should have tracked things, right? Because measurement depends on tracking. Like, if you don't have good tracking, then you won't be able to measure things.
Right.
And hence, irrespective of whatever activity that we were doing, whether it's online, offline, this, that, whatever, right, we started tracking. Now, when you start tracking things, right, you are able to measure the quantity, and you're able to then make sense out of it.
Right.
So tracking leads to insights. It leads to data which can then be converted into insights, right? And over several years, right, we've been able to measure impact of TV campaigns, impact of, like, let's say some print or a billboard or a video campaign, running on YouTube, or a Facebook video or a Hotstar video, like maybe an ad on Savan, like practically everything, right? And today we are able to do that across sources, right? And this is something, that's kind of really exciting, like, that you are able to answer this question, that where is your marketing dollars going and what is that generating in returns. Once you're able to do that, right, your ability to scale goes up significantly.
Yeah.
Right? You are able to understand where should I spend more money, right? Once you're able to understand where should I spend more money, you are able to, constantly make those decisions over and over again, right? And if you can show the return on investment on whatever you're doing, there is no reason why you can't, get funds, or you can't raise money, or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
Right?
Everyone gets aligned.
Exactly.
In the
Everybody understands that, okay, this is why they want to do this, and so on and so forth. So I think, right, like, because of our core focus on ROI based marketing, like it's kind of helped us significantly over several years to kind of scale and reach a place where we are today. And measurement also leads to, an extremely improved experience for the consumers. Like when at some point of time during our product journey, right, we kind of looked at data and tried to figure out, like, why are these people not acting on what we want them to do, right? And every single time when we have broken that data down into several steps, right, you can figure that out.
Yeah.
You can find out that, this is the real reason why people are not moving ahead from this step to the second step.
Yeah.
And that basically leads you to building solutions and kind of improving your consumers' experience. If they are, failing if your system is failing somewhere, your customers are also going to fail, and nobody wants that. This is entertainment. This is leisure entertainment. People want to enjoy their time playing on a game, and if they're having a bad experience, they're not going to come back because they have 100 other options, right? Yeah. And when you look at entertainment as an industry in US, gaming per se is larger than Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it is pretty much at par with the audio entertainment industry. It's that music, big. Yeah. In India, gaming is like maybe 2-4% of the overall entertainment industry. It's that small, and it's largely because the Indian game developers have largely picked up the content from outside of India and tried to sell it in India. Or they have developed games for international audiences, and hence the monetization challenges have led to not
games
a strong growth.
Not becoming that big.
Exactly. But then when you look at the recent trends, right, you would see that, my sense is that probably in last financial year, the skill gaming industry probably did around 800 crores in revenue.
Wow.
And, or probably more, I think more in 2016. And if you look at the recent reports by Google and KPMG, you would see that the gaming industry, everything put together in India is on track to hitting like $1 billion by 2021. Mm-hmm. So obviously there is a massive growth potential in gaming, and some of the recent hits in India are showing that, right? That people are willing to pick up with Jio coming in, with Paytm making payments super easy.
UPI maybe.
And UPI, right? Like, pretty much everybody's, and of course, the government of India expanding the bank accounts, like, taking it to masses across the country, right? Like, so So all these things, right, kind of when you put it together, right, like it kind of starts helping the ecosystem, right? Not just gaming, but across several sectors, right? And I think all that is also going to help gaming per se, right? And we see that, from a source of entertainment perspective, skill-based gaming is going to be one of the dominant, contributors in the coming years.
Nice. All right. I think on that note, take a quick break, come back, and we'll hope to measure even the impact of this podcast someday on how many people go in and type in Rummy Circle.
I'm going to ask you questions, absolutely.
Yes.
Sure.
All right. Great.
Okay.
Yeah. It's IVM here, let's go. We the IVM kids on the block over here. Just to talk, taking a break from producing all day. Coming on this podcast cause we got stuff to say. IVM Daily is the name of the show. Monday to Friday, we ready to go. Talking about stuff in our head. We might even talk about our favorite bread. Signing out, it's IVM here, the podcast network that's in your ear.
Catch IVM Daily, Monday to Friday on the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back. We've been having a riveting discussion with Sachin about all the do's and don'ts of digital marketing, and I'm sure if our listeners have run campaigns of any kind, they are questioning themselves now about, are they doing it right? So on that same note, just to take it ahead, I mean, Sachin, you were telling me about how, a lot of people forget measuring critical points, especially when it comes to digital marketing. And again, I deal with this myself now about, people always question campaigns, whether it's 10 साल पहले email को question करते थे because that was the only thing now.
Yeah.
Now people have given email its due. I mean, it's still very powerful, I believe, but they say, okay, fine, it'll go in someone's promotions folder or whatever. I mean, it's very, people think they understand it.
Yeah.
Whereas the other stuff which is new, which is or web marketing or mobile marketing and so on, people are just looking for data here and there and hoping that things work.
So, one interesting question that comes up several times, right, is that, people would walk up to me and say that, what, this campaign is not working, I'm shutting it down. Okay. And most of the time, the easy culprit is the creative, right? And people would say, this creative is not working. Or they would say, Facebook as a platform is not working for us. So there are millions and millions of people on Facebook accessing it every single day.
Yeah.
And we are saying Facebook as a platform doesn't work for me, right? And so the reason is that, this field of marketing, right, where you bring in data, right, where you start looking at funnels, right, is boring. Because this requires, looking at data. And people have grown up looking at TV creatives. They've grown up looking at videos, right?
Hoardings,
and
ads.
Newspapers, right? Like so it just, people just can't make sense out of it that, okay, this source is not working for me, this channel is not working for me. And my first question to them is, right, when they say that this campaign is not working, what part of the campaign or what part of the funnel is not working? That is the first time when you get into details, right? There is a click-through as the first metric, right? That someone sees your creative, they click on it, right? Or they are tempted enough to comment on it, like it, share it, so on and so forth. Those are your first metrics to look at, right? Are people clicking on it?
Yeah.
If you have a good click-through rate, that means people are willing to click on your creative. That means the creative is making sense to them.
Right.
Then comes the second part of the second step in the funnel. Typically, the second step for most of the people is a transaction.
Yeah.
But there are 10 other steps in the middle that people forget. They say my cost per transaction is very high. But there are 10 other steps in the middle. After clicking on an ad, someone is going to land on a landing page.
Yep.
Or the app page. Now, just some time back, very recently, right, we launched an app called Ultimate Card Club. where we kind of combined 3 of our games, which is Ultimate Teen Patti, Ultimate Poker, and Ultimate Rummy together in a single app. Right?
Wow. Okay.
And we launched this app, and we looked at the data, and we said, this is not working, right? And then we went deeper, right? And we realized that in some of our existing apps, what is the top banner that people see? What is the first line that people read? And so on and so forth, right? And we wrote down probably, some 50 comments on what is different between the previous app and this app, right? And then painfully going through data, day by day, we kept running experiments every single day. And this experimentation happened at a very, very fast pace, right? We ran A/B tests practically like non-stop, right? And we kept changing one thing at a time, because if you make several changes, then you don't know
which one, yeah.
right? And once we did that, right, we kept realizing that, okay, this top banner mattered a lot, right? The copy on that top banner, the imagery in that top banner, then the first line that people read, the description, then several other things, right? Like, and the only way to answer that is by running an experiment. You run an A/B test with just one change in variable, and try to find out, right?
Yeah.
Same way when you are running, let's say, a Facebook ad, right? Someone clicked on it, they landed on your landing page. If your landing page is going to take, let's say, maybe 50 seconds to load, nobody has the patience today. If it's going to take 30 seconds to load, still nobody has the patience. Yeah. In today's time, with Google AMP, the pages load in less than 1 second.
Yeah.
And if you're going to blame Facebook or creative and say that the campaign is not working, clearly you're not looking at the load times of your pages.
Yeah.
I spent 1.5 years to bring down the load time of our pages, and I made it faster than Google and Facebook.
Wow.
And I looked at this data every single month, like practically every single week whenever we made changes. But then over several months, I looked at this data, and I went extremely in depth about every single element that loads on the page and why it is, why is it slowing it down,
yeah.
and how do we alter that, right? And every single alteration that we did improved the load time, right? And this is this is probably in your tech pipeline, people would not give priority to this. People will think that, all right, what's the big deal? It's loading. What's the issue? And it's a thing which you can't visually see because the page loads in front of you. Maybe you have a good internet connection, but we are now talking about 500 million people who are going to access the internet. They have varying internet speeds, right? So looking at the second step of your funnel, right? Then the third thing, are people even reading the content that you have? Running eye tracking studies or heat mapping studies on your landing pages to understand that what is that people reading? You might be thinking as a marketer sitting in your seat that, okay, this is my nice graphic or this is my nice imagery or copy or whatever, right? But maybe the person's eye span or attention span is not even going there.
Yeah.
So then what's the point of whatever you're doing? And hence, the only way to answer those questions is by looking at data, looking at those heat maps or subsequently running A/B tests around that, right? Another interesting story is that in 2011, right, before 2011, I had run almost, I think, 10 different A/B tests. And one day, I was looking at data and I kind of realized that there is some problem, with the data. There was some inconsistency. And I was like, why is this happening? The conversion metrics on both the paths that I was seeing was very strange. So I was not very clear why this is happening. And one of the hypotheses that I had was that basically the tool that I'm using to split my traffic is kind of slowing down the second page, because of which there are people who are not willing to wait that long for that page to load, and hence they are leaving.
Yeah.
Right. And once I kind of realized that this could be happening, I started doubting all my past 10 A/B tests. And then I was like, okay, let me run a AA test, right? Let me split the traffic on the same page like, by making an identical version, right? And when I did that, I saw that there was a difference, statistically significant difference on both the pages metrics.
Yeah.
And I was like, boss, all my testing is gone. Like, like all my 1 year effort of running those 10 tests is like gone.
Because they've been biased by the middle split. Yeah.
And then I started, looking for tools, right? Like this is 2010, I guess, right? And I started looking for tools, right? What tool can help me, right? How do I do this? And funnily, at that point of time, I couldn't find any meaningful tool that could do this. Every single tool did JavaScript-based, splitting of traffic, which would add load time to the page. And so, I basically...
needed server-side.
Yes, you needed server-side, splitting of traffic. And there was one tool I remember at that point of time which was doing it, and that was like a US-based company asking for US dollars. So we didn't have that much money, or like, so anyhow, so I reached out to my technology team. I explained the problem. They understood. They said, all right, we'll build it. Yeah. And we built our own A/B testing tool. So it was like a server-side redirection, no delays, like super fast, everything connected, to our user ID level data so that we can measure the full funnel subsequently, and so on and so forth. And fantastic. And I reran a bunch of the tests that I had run earlier.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
But luckily, most of the tests kind of, survived, apart from one or two, which we had to throw out. And, since then we have been testing not just on the landing pages, but inside also. So every single game feature that we launch is A/B tested. In fact, we kind of built a system through which we are able to split the players into two equal parts inside the game lobby also. So half the people will see a completely different rummy circle and half the people will see a completely different rummy circle. Today there are 2052 different versions of Rummy Circle running.
One with a color change here or something.
No color changes. And that's the funny part. Like, color changes are not part of our... They're like, we might test a color change like very little in our overall process. There are so many other tests to run, right? So many other things to test, right? And my sense is that by doing this testing, right, and then subsequently analyzing that data and trying to question that why is this happening, gives you tremendous amount of insights. Like some of our experiments, right, we used to split the traffic into two equal parts and look at data, and we would see like significant differences. And, at one point of time we said, but we are looking data for iOS and Android together. Why? And once you separate, just the devices, you start seeing different data. Yeah. You'll see that iOS users are behaving differently. You'll see Android users are behaving differently. Sometimes that same thing happened by geography. Like, if you're running something in Maharashtra, in fact, even in Maharashtra, if you're running a campaign in Mumbai versus the rest of Maharashtra, the behavior is very different. All this you can find out only by testing, by coming up with hypotheses, that this could be the reason by looking at the data.
Correct.
Right? And we keep feeding our learnings back into our campaigns and keep questioning ourselves. This is what I tell every new joinee in the company, right? Like, so I take a quick presentation for the entire new joinee batch, and I just tell them one thing, right? Be curious, right? Ask questions. Do not assume that whatever has been done is right. Do not assume that. Question. There are two outcomes, right? One, you will learn why that is the case. Or two, you might find something which has not been tested yet, which gives you an opportunity to test it out, right? Like, so fantastic, like, and the way we've built the culture in the company is that people, irrespective of the department or their position in the company, can come up with new ideas basis some data that they have. And, they can come up with a new product feature, right? And that will get implemented and tested. And if it does add meaningful business value to the company, you will get rewarded for that, right? And that kind of keeps, people motivated to because they know that, that their thought or their analysis actually led to some meaningful business value,
Yeah.
right? So I think those are some interesting things that we do on a regular basis in the company that kind of helps us keep going, keep grounded, staying humble, not getting excited about some anomalies and so on and so forth, and
Right.
and just keeps us going.
Also, I think being in this unique industry of gaming, right, where such micro behaviors are so much more apparent, I would say, or maybe I'm wrong. I mean, after listening to you, I think everyone should question everything and measure everything, whether you're a e-commerce, whether you're any other sort of app or mobile website, right? I think just being able to measure and make sense of what's happening on your own platform is such a big insight. And of course, I mean, that's the game everyone's playing now. Everyone's slowly, at least, trying to understand that measuring things and actioning things make such a difference in the way you approach your consumers. But being in gaming, do you think you guys have some advantage in terms of, being able to really model on these unique user behaviors which the gaming industry per se has, right? Because you're playing with, like you earlier said yourself, people's leisure time, right? So it's a very fickle sort of attachment that they have. At the same time, if it works for them, it becomes an addiction, right, of sorts. Unlike things like, it's not me going shopping, or it's not me going from A to B by grabbing a taxi, or all these other apps and digital experiences that we have. And also, if you could add some color onto what you've seen as because of this, right?
Yeah.
Because of your first-hand experience with these.
Yeah. So let me first try to answer the first part. Like, is this unique to gaming? I wouldn't say that. Interestingly, I've spoken to few people in e-commerce space or transportation space and so on and so forth. And what I've found is that, companies who are tracking and who are applying, who are using data to find out insights, they are doing pretty well, right? And they are building unique consumer personas through which they are able to personalize marketing for consumers. And the good part about that is that it kind of makes marketing or sales approach less salesy and less annoying.
Yes.
Why? Because you are applying data, you are not doing spray and pray, right? You are actually, learning that what stage of a consumption cycle is this consumer in.
Yeah.
If someone is, let's say, at a very early stage of consumption cycle, where someone is just trying to research, and you are saying, make your third transaction and get some, discount or some coupon or cashback or whatever, right? And this guy, like, I've not even decided whether I'm going to buy or not. Like, you're telling me about the third transaction. What are you talking about, right? So I don't think that, that it's not very unique to us. But yes, culturally, we've tried to build this across companies so that everybody is looking at data, right? Like, and hence kind of helps us deliver good experience for the consumers, right? Our core motto is to deliver the best Rummy experience, right? And hence it kind of helps. Apart from that, coming to the second part of it, like, where, especially in gaming, where we are trying to build behaviors and trying to understand behaviors and kind of trying to optimize, and if it works, then would it lead to addiction and so on and so forth. I think what we've seen here is that if you try to understand behaviors, right, and try to personalize the experiences, you also try to, sort of understand that where is that the consumer happiness level is going down, right? And once you try to understand that where is the consumer happiness level going down, you know that this is the time to put a limit.
Yeah.
Right. So we've invested significantly over the past several years, to kind of build limits into the system itself, right? These are not like manual tinkers, like this kind of stops people, It just tells people that, based on what we are seeing, hold on.
Cut them off. Huh?
Yeah, hold on. And we freeze them out. Like, we don't let them play. Okay. And this is by design into the system. Like, it's not like once in a while someone is being flagged or anything, right? In fact, over a period of time, like we are now getting into the zone of leveraging advanced data techniques and artificial intelligence and several other, data science techniques to kind of predict these things, right? Like much earlier than when people reach a certain stage, right? So again, like, it's all about how you leverage data, right? It's all about how you make data work for you, right? And instead of being proactive, instead of being reactive to a situation, data can allow you to become proactive, right? With predictive outcomes, you are much more in advance able to act on several things, right? And we've been constantly working on that. In fact, there is a organization called the Rummy Federation, which is now trying to kind of bring together all the rummy operators or skill gaming operators in the country to kind of set certain guidelines, right? That right from the creative, like, what can you say or what you can't say and so on and so forth to many other levels.
Yeah, and of course, in general, the domain has also expanded. I think obviously the card skill games space is there. Now we are in this league of fantasy games.
Yeah.
And more of these gaming platforms will, of course, I'm sure, show their face. And I still, of course, just play first-person shooters, but I don't think. But I'm sure that there is proof in the fact that there's so many audiences who love the kind of games that you guys produce.
I think it is kind of part of our culture. If you think about it, right, goes back to when the first dice was rolled by Shiva or something. It goes back to mythology, right? Like, but having said that, more to do with how culturally we've grown up, right? Games have always been part of our culture. Like, when I was growing up, or, my parents or my friends and family, we used to, like, meet cousins and all of them during summer vacations, right? And that was like such a blast. Like, everybody used to, be in a single room and, 10 kids all playing all sorts of games. And everybody likes different kinds of games. So I think it kind of is part of your cultural fabric. It kind of brings people together. It lets your play and the fun part come out. And I think what we've basically done is basically brought people together back through the platform online, because as you grow up, like, everybody's kind of sprinkled all over the country or outside the country and so on and so forth. So, and the amount of time that you get in general in your busy life itself goes down, and if some platform can kind of bring people together to have a great time and have a good fun game, fantastic, why not? And like I said, like, even today, right, entertainment as a category, gaming is an extremely small fraction in India, right? So there is a massive growth. And yes, hopefully, like, if things are going good, like, you should see more such platforms coming up.
Yep, I see it. I think I took a train here, and I know there were some people playing Ludo.
Yes.
So yes. I know that's also something playing on their nostalgia. They played as a kid, and now they're playing as middle-aged adults. So definitely lots more to come. I mean, thanks so much for doing this, Sachin. I think you gave us a whole lot to go and think about when it comes to measuring and understanding whatever products all of our listeners are building and entrepreneurs are building. And the more we go down this path, the better we'll get. So thanks so much. It was great having you. Why don't you let everyone know how people can maybe talk to you on Twitter? What's your handle?
Sure. First of all, thanks a lot for, having me as part of this podcast and patiently listening to all my responses, which had a lot of data and gets boring. But then, thanks a lot. And I am available on Twitter at SACHINUPPAL at Sachin Uppal. I'm available on LinkedIn. What else? I'm available on Instagram. I don't know if that counts at all.
No, I think this is great. And of course, we'll hope that maybe you can join our Slack channel. We have one where a lot of folks leave feedback.
Sure.
And we'll hope to do maybe another poll around the kind of comments and feedback people give around this episode.
Super.
And of course, to everyone else, since Amit is not with me today, who's my regular co-host, I will do his part of the final notes for everyone to please go and give us a rating on whether it's iTunes or any other podcasting app that you're listening to this podcast on. And of course, do check in on our website for signing into the Slack channel. Leave your email and we'll send you an invite to join. And of course, any other last notes? I guess you guys also have a whole lot of new events coming. Do check out rummycircle.com, of course, to find out all the cool stuff Sachin is talking about. And they will be measuring you as you go along there. All right, thank you so much.
He bends down to test the warm water for his bath. He comes here to quench his thirst for a hot shower and some podcasts. You can witness how he enjoys having other people talk about cool stuff in his bathroom. Indeed, it helps him with his loneliness. You can find more of his pieces on ivmpodcast.com, your one-stop destination where you can check out the coolest Indian podcasts. Happy listening.